In today's video, we continue on with our NHL GM Report Card series. Today, we look at the Vancouver Canucks. GM Patrick Allred has been a very busy man this offseason. Several players were re-signed, several players left, lots of new faces coming in. We'll discuss all the trades, the signings, and everything they've done and give them their grade coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we continue on with our NHL GM Report Card series here today, looking at the Vancouver Canucks this time. We work our way through the teams in the Pacific Division. We previously already have a few others completed here. We're about halfway through this division now. So Patrick Allred, as I mentioned, has been a very, very busy NHL general manager. We've got a few trades to discuss, a bunch of internal signings. They brought in quite a few players as UFAs on free agency. So the team's actually changed a decent amount. So let's take a look now at all the moves they've made and grade their work. Of course, the first trade we have is kind of shedding some contracts. One in particular that was not favorable to the team, and obviously somebody they wanted to move and I think had mutual feelings on that subject. That's Ilya Mikheyev. So they moved Mikheyev in the signing rights to Sam Lafferty, along with a second-round pick in 2027 to Chicago in exchange for a 2027 fourth-rounder. So the Blackhawks get Mikheyev and a second-rounder, and they give up a fourth. So they basically, get an upgraded pick there for the second round. They take on the Mikheyev contract and had the signing rights to Sam Lafferty, who they did not sign. Lafferty ended up signing a 2-year deal later on with the Buffalo Sabres. So the fact they were able to move that Mikheyev contract, that was really good piece of business. He wasn't fitting in well, and certainly somebody that they team and player, I think, mutually had wanted to decide to part ways. So they get that done. That was a good piece of business. Then they traded Vasily Podkolzin late into the offseason here in August to the Edmonton Oilers for a fourth-round pick in next year's draft. Obviously, Podkolzin, after all the other moves they've made, became a player that I think they are cautious of here. They didn't want to give up on too early, but with all the added depth to the wings, it's hard to find a roster spot for him. They also knew that he probably wouldn't clear waivers, and he needs waivers now to go down to the minor league. So it's not somebody that they can just demote automatically. He's got enough experience and old enough that waivers are required. That wasn't going to happen. So rather than risk losing him for nothing after training camp, they made a move now to Edmonton for a fourth rounder. So again, don't love the deal. I hate seeing teams have to kind of give up on a player that was drafted so highly so early in his career. I hope for their sake it doesn't backfire. It does have that potential. You just never know when a player is going to find their stride and really figure things out. But, I can see why they made the move. And as of today, at least, I don't have an issue with it. They also brought in right now on a PTO, Sammy Blais. That is not a signing or anything just yet, but he will be going to training camp. I don't mind that at all. They do have an abundance of bottom six or fourth line players, though, so I think it will be very challenging for Blais to earn a contract and a roster spot. And the only way I think that happens is if they really like him compared to some of the other guys and move at least one other player out. But that's going to be tricky. So Blais in the mix for a contract, but doesn't not officially signed. Internally, they did a bunch of business as well. They, of course, got the long-term deal done for Phil Hronek. Hronek was reportedly asking for over $8 million, was the rumors early on. He signs for 8 years at $7.25 million. Definitely fair to say that second half of the season wasn't as kind to him, but I think he was battling an injury based on what we learned afterwards. At that point, now at $8 million, I'm like, that's getting to be a little bit much for what he brings, but he's been a good partner for Quinn Hughes. Hughes really seems to like him, was hoping he would get signed and stay, and at $7.25, I don't mind the deal. He's a good right shot defenseman. Problem is, if they would have moved him, they would have been immediately looking to replace him, and that wouldn't have been easy. So, again, I don't have an issue with this contract. I think it's pretty decent. They brought in a bunch of other players back on short-term, cheap one-year deals. Mark Friedman, Jet Wu, Linus Karlsson, Cole McWard all get 1 year, 2-way contracts. They got Teddy Bluger signed on a 2-year deal at $1.8 million. Expectations are Bluger will hopefully be their 3C. So for that kind of money, I don't mind the contract. They bring back Tyler Myers. I know there was a lot of word surfacing after their playoff run came to an end that they were seriously considering bringing Myers back. Whereas I know the fan base, for a large part of that contract, couldn't wait for it to expire so that he could be out of the mix, because he really wasn't that great. He didn't live up to the contract at $6 million. Did he play decently this year, better, and maybe in the playoffs and earn a opportunity to stay? You could say he probably did, but 3 years at $3 million at his age with how he's played, I think it's too much. I'm not a fan of it. I think they could have gotten better value here. Unfortunately, a guy like Nikita Zadorov was not able to stick around, and I think they could have offered Zadorov a bit more money had they not brought back Myers. I mean, if you look at their top 6 defensemen, Hughes and Hronek were going to be there, and by the time we get to this point in the offseason, the Hronek deal was done. So you had your top pair in place. You have Carson Soucy, who was one half of the second pair last year, and then you had a few question marks. Obviously a few other guys departed the team, but bringing back Zadorov, and they brought in Desharnais from Edmonton. Can you imagine Zadorov, Desharnais? Those guys are huge monsters, and Soucy's a good size too. They brought in Derek Forbort. I mean, in all honesty, I think the team could have been better off without Myers. That's my opinion. I know there's some Canuck fans that are going to probably disagree with that and do like him, but it just seemed like he was such a polarizing player throughout the course of the contract that if you're going to bring him back, I was like, okay, well, maybe they bring him back for a year, but 3 more years, I don't know. I don't like it. I do not like the deal at all. I think they could have been. I understand he's a big body, long stick, and he had his moments when he's like, okay, if he made less money, it would be better, and he could play a lower role, third pair. But based on how they're paying all their defensemen, I think they're going to expect on the right side, they're paying him more than Desharnais, so that they're going to expect him to play a bigger role, right? I mean, they're paying him for it. So based on the money, he's still going to be a top 4, and I don't think he's on. I think he should have been a third pair. And if you're going to bring him back, do you bother signing Desharnais? I don't think you do. I mean, you find if you bring back Zadorov, that Zadorov maybe play his weak side on the top 4, because he's a top 4 guy, right? And that's the issue. I guess if you really focus on the left and righties, then that makes it a little bit more complicated. But if Zadorov and Soucy can make up that second pair for you, then you could not, bring back Myers for less money. Don't sign Desharnais. I just don't know that you need both of them there. Forbort comes in to replace Ian Cole. I don't mind that. But, anyways, the Myers contract, not a fan. Dakota Joshua returns, 4 years at $325. I don't mind it. It's a bit of a gamble to an extent because, last year was really good for Joshua. Some great progress. He's got good size. I know Rick Tocchet really likes him. And I can see how he's definitely worth keeping around and keeping him in the mix for sure. My concern is the term. Just because we don't have a huge body of work here at the level that he played at last year. You want to believe that what you saw last year was not a fluke, and that he's going to be able to not only do that, but hopefully continue to get better as well and build upon that. And if he does, this contract's going to be great. If he struggles to find what he had last year, then it could be a disaster. So I don't mind the contract, but I just want to acknowledge that I do think it comes with some risk. They re-signed, backup goalie Artur Silovs, who had to have a big role in the playoffs. 2 years at $850. You know what? I have no issues there whatsoever. Externally, they were very busy. They're bringing Jake DeBrusk from Boston, 7 years at $5.5 million. I think that's a pretty good deal for DeBrusk. I know there were some talks that he might be looking for 6 or 7. He doesn't get that. 5.5 is pretty good. Denton Heinen also comes from Boston at 2 years, 2.25. That might be a little bit much because I think Heinen's probably going to be a fourth-line player. I don't know that he's going to really have a spot to play in the top 9, and 2.25 to me is too much for a fourth-line player. I don't mind Heinen. I don't mind the signing. I don't mind the player. I think it's a little bit too much money, though. I think under $2 million would have been better, closer to that 1 1.5 to 1.7 range. Yeah, I mean, it's not a horrible signing. It's not a terrible term. I just, for the role that he's going to have, looking at their forward group, I just don't see how he's going to, I guess the only possibility here is, because I guess when they signed him, they didn't have Sprong, because they signed Daniel Sprong as well 1 year at $975, and I think Sprong might get a shot at the top 6. Because to me, Heinen can play in the lower part of the lineup a little more likely than Sprong could. So we'll see. But I mean, I don't mind the Heinen deal, just maybe a little bit much, because I think he's going to be lower in the lineup. Desharnais, 2 years, $2 million for third pair defenseman at the size and penalty killing. I have no problem with the deal. But like I said, I think they should have kept Zadorov. Made that a priority. It would have been challenging cap-wise, I get that. But keeping Zadorov and either bringing in Desharnais and not bringing in Myers, it would have been a little bit tricky to do, because they would have had to find a way to cut a few dollars here and there elsewhere to make sure they had enough money to give Zadorov. It sounded like they were willing to go to $5 million for him, but no more. At least I think that's the number they were offering him. But at the end of the day, he doesn't come back. But Desharnais, I have no problem in 2 years and $2 million. Forbort, 1 year, 1.5. I don't mind that at all. Kiefer Sherwood comes over, 2 years at 1.5. Obviously, that he'll be a fourth liner. That's not bad. But they have a lot of guys. I guess for Sherwood's contract, the only concern I have is not so much with him or the contract, but like I said, they have too many guys. Like your fourth line right now, to me, is probably going to be Suter, Sherwood, probably Heinen, and then you still got Di Giuseppe, you still got Nils Amon. You just have a bunch of guys that can play those roles, so I think they're going to end up shedding a contract throughout camp somewhere. I'm not sure how that's going to work, but Sherwood, and he gets 2 years too, so he's not going to be the guy that goes. Sprong comes in, like I said, 1 year, $975. That's a sneaky good signing. I think he can play second line. If he can really produce with Pettersson or something, I think your second line might be Pettersson with DeBrusk and Sprong. If you play Hoglander with Miller and Besser, or unless you flop not Hoglander and DeBrusk maybe, but either way, there's real potential there for Sprong to contribute. Yuri Patera comes in as a depth goaltender, 2 years at league minimum on a two-way deal. So again, lots of signings. For the most part, I like their work. The Myers contract is one I'm not fond of, and I think the Heinen contract's a little much, but not terrible. So you're probably looking at a forward group, like I said, a Miller, Besser, Hoglander, or Petey, Pettersson, Sprong, DeBrusk. That's going to probably be your top 6. You never know. Things could change in camp. Your third line's probably going to be Joshua and Garland on the wings with Bluger, and then Suter, Sherwood, Heinen right now is where things are projecting based on contracts. But like I said, you got Di Giuseppe and Amon in the mix there as well for spots. And, again, like on the wings, could DeBrusk play with Pettersson? Yes, but he could also play with Miller and Besser. Joshua may be able to fight for a top 6 spot as well. I mean, I know last year he had pretty good chemistry in that third line with Bluger and Garland, so I don't know. We'll have to see where things play out, but lots of good moves. This team is definitely different. If you look at their addition, subtraction, going in, you've got a bunch of new forwards, 4 new forwards with DeBrusk, Heinen, Sherwood, and Sprong, a couple new defensemen with Desharnais and Forbort. Going out on the no longer with the club, you got Elias Lindholm, big loss there. Mikheyev, not a bad loss because he wasn't fitting in. Lafferty's not back; he's easily replaced. Casey DeSmith, did fine for them, but not really needed anymore. I have no problem there going with Shilovs after how he played in the playoffs. Zadorov is a big loss. Ian Cole. In between guys like Forbort, Desharnais, they can replace what he brings. And of course, like I said, with Podkolzin, I just hope they didn't give up on him too early. But based on this deep forward group, I don't know where he would have been able to play this year. So at the same time, I think for the most part, the team is definitely a little different than last year, to say the least. But I mean, they moved on Mikheyev. The free agent signings are mostly good, except though my only issue minorly for the ones they brought in, a little bit much on Heinen, but for the most part, I like what they did. They have abundance of fourth liners now, so I think somebody's going to have to go. We didn't get a Brock Besser contract extension, and there's been no talks according to reports. So That's mildly concerning, but I mean, they had so much other stuff to do that I can see why maybe it wasn't a huge priority. But obviously, looking after Brock and what he's going to do next on the contract will be, something that comes to the forefront now. Obviously the Demko situation is concerning as well. I think they need to learn to not play Demko so much. I mean, there's been a lot of different reports on this injury that he's dealing with, that he may miss the start of the year. They're still looking for depth goaltending as well. Rumors about Kevin Lankinen. I'm not sure if they're going to bring him in, but that's a difficult situation to pick because we don't know all the details of the injury. But it's really unfortunate that Zadorov is not there anymore. I wish they could have found a way to keep him. So I will kind of be critical of that. Like I said, the fact that the Besser contract extension is not done is, a little bit of a, mark against them, but it's not the end of the world either. I wouldn't have brought back Myers. So like Zadorov, Myers was my big, gripe, I guess, with what they've done. But for the most part, I like the work. I'm going to give Alvin a grade of a B+ here. I like most of what they did. I think the defense overall is going to be a little bit weaker. You take Zadorov out of the picture, like I said, and now you have Myers in there at a 3-year deal. You have Desharnais. Well, he was there before. Then you get Desharnais, Forbort. I liked them better with Zadorov in there, to be honest. I think Zadorov and Cole is going to be better than Forbort and Desharnais. So I think the D is a little bit weaker. The forward group is definitely deeper for sure and stronger. The goaltending is about the same. But of course, the health of Demko will play a big role in how that all plays out as well. So for the most part, I think the Canucks are going to be a pretty competitive team. They'll be competing for the top 3 of the division. I think I expect them to be a playoff team and all that. So for the most part, I like a lot of what they did. And generally speaking, I think the team will be better. But my concern is on the back end. And if Demko is out for any length of time or misses a bunch of time this year and the back end's not as good, that could be a concern. So I would imagine that's where they're going to turn their attention to between that and the Besser extension. So let me know what your thoughts are on the Vancouver Canucks offseason. How would you grade the work of Patrick Allvin? Do you think this team is better? Let me know your thoughts on their moves in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. I'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you next time.